Hi, everyone. This is Diane Davies, and welcome to another author interview with Kiddie Lit Market. Today we have an exciting author to visit with. I opened her website this morning, and there's a great big, bold sentence across that says, "Inspiring children one word at a time." Mary Bleckwehl. I love that. I absolutely love that. And Mary is an author. She's an educator. She's enthusiastic, and she's just a real go-getter. And I also read somewhere that she sparks creativity in the children that she works with. And I have to underline the word sparks. And I have to underline the word creativity, because that's exactly what I see when I visit with Mary and when I see her. She published her first book in 2011, and the rest is history, as they say. So I'm happy to introduce you to Mary Bleckwehl. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Diane, and thanks for having me today.
Oh, you are so welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Help us to know you as a person.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Northeast Iowa in a big farm family. We had, it was a dairy farm, and so lots to do, and we had hogs, and we did crop farming, hay, beans, soybeans, corn, and the chores were endless. We had a vegetable garden that I think was the size to feed a small nation. And so, if we weren't outdoors taking care of animals and doing field work, we were helping our mother freeze and can goods from the garden, or just simply making 2 huge meals a day, which, farm families eat. And then when I was old enough to go to school, I went to Waterville Elementary, which was the name of the school, the little town of maybe 100 people, I guess. And in fact, it was my honor to go back and do an author visit there twice, a couple years ago. And then after my second book, so maybe about in 2013 or 14, and they had never in the history of the school had an author visit. I was the only one. So it was really special for me to go back to my elementary alma mater, but also special for staff and students.
Absolutely.
And then let's see. I don't want to go through everything in my life, but I loved reading in school. Honestly, writing was a little struggle for me in elementary school and even middle school. I don't think I cared for it that much. But then it was when I was a senior in high school that I took a journalism class. And that journalism class was for only about 9 students. And Mrs. Roby was the teacher, and she was wonderful. She had us, it wasn't just your typical class where you're doing an assignment and you're handing it in for a grade. This was a class where what you wrote, first of all, you're sent out in the world of the school to report on what was going on in the school, sports and doing interviews with staff and students. But then you wrote these articles for the local paper. So at first it's kind of like being an author, where you put your time and effort into this baby called a book, and then you wonder what people will think of it. Well, that was my first taste of writing something that somebody else is going to, in this case, the whole community is going to be reading in the local paper, whether it's just a write-up about the girls' basketball game or a senior spotlight or something. And that really gave me my first taste of writing for others, other than just a teacher giving you a grade. And so when I went to college, I became a teacher. I was a 6th grade science teacher, and also taught once we moved back we lived on the East Coast for a while when my husband and I did, but we moved back to the Midwest, and I have taught here in my hometown for about 15 years or so, and still do some subbing in between author events. But it was really that love of books and writing, and then starting with that journalism class in high school that brought me where I am today.
Great. Well, so we know you published your first book in 2011. Is that when your writing career actually started? Or I guess you could consider your newspaper writing and all of that part of your career too. So when really would you consider your writing career started?
When people ask me that, for all intensive purposes, I tell them, as you mentioned with my first book, Henry, You're Late Again, about a little guy who was late for school, in 2011. Now, it took from the time that I wrote the first version of that until it got published, it took 5 or 6 years. So I guess you might say that you would have to take 5 or 6 years away from 2011 to say that that's when I started really writing for the purposes of thinking, I'd really like to try to get my work published. But yeah, so I would say about in 2000, let's see if I subtract those 6 years, 2005 is when I started writing that story. But I've always kept, and maybe many authors can say this, or many people can say this, I've always kept little journals on my nightstand, and I like to write quotes and little poetry lines that I come up with and ideas, just because I like words and I like the way they sound. But actual publishing of work in 2011, yes.
Okay, great. And I guess my next question is, what's your motivation for writing? Why do you write? And why did you choose children's books?
Oh boy. Well, probably for a couple of reasons. One is that I think words are really important. Words can hurt or heal. They can make us laugh or cry, and words that are written, they're spoke, are kind of like they go out there and they almost evaporate. Mm-hmm. But words that can be written down are much more permanent. Whether it's a text message or a children's book or an adult book, you can read it over and over and over. Like, I even like to read my mother who is gone. I like to read her letters because then it brings her back to me. So words are important to me. Second reason why I like to write is I love to create things. I don't only like to write. I like to design flower gardens. I like to sew projects and do craft projects with my little grandchildren. I like to make forts out of sofa cushions, because I like seeing and playing around with the end product. And the third reason I like to write is perhaps you share this. I guess I don't know if we've necessarily had that conversation, Diane, but I like to write because I see it as a legacy I can pass on to my children and grandchildren and any children who like books. And then you asked why kids' books instead of adults. I love reading adult books, but I love reading everything from board books up through adult books. But as a mom, a grandmother, a former teacher, I taught many grades, but I taught first grade for a long time, where I read a lot of picture books. That's probably my sweet spot. Maybe if I'd been a middle school teacher, maybe I would be writing more of those. I have written a couple of them, but not a lot. So I'd have to think about that a little bit more, other than I read once in a blog that picture books are for all ages. Whether you're 3 or 103, you can get a little nugget out of them in a short amount of time. Whereas adult books are clearly, or even middle school books, are clearly for an older audience, and little ones probably aren't going to get a whole lot out of those. So that's why I like children's books. They're for a wider audience.
Okay, well, thank you for that answer. about Henry, you're late again. I loved how you added in there that he thought the secretary lived right at the school. As a former teacher, I believe, kids believe that. I think they believe we tunnel down into the basement somewhere and have a bedroom and curlers for our hair or something. Anyway, tell us about your children's books, Mary.
Sure. Well, that first one that I mentioned is Henry, You're Late Again. As I mentioned, I was a first grade teacher, and when I wrote this, it was a year that I heard some pretty far-fetched reasons from students as to why they were late for school, and I just would listen to them, and in the back of my mind, kind of listen with a straight face, and you're looking at the little late slip that the student had to get from the office, and smile, and also relate to it, because as a mother of 3 kids, I remember trying to get everybody going and out the door. By the time I got to work, I felt like, my work was over. My majority of my work was over for the day. And so I could really relate to these different excuses. And of course, in a children's book, you want to, in a very subtle way, you don't want to knock kids over the head with the message of the book, but you want to, in a subtle way, give a message, but also have it be engaging. And a lot of times you wanted to make it humorous, or I like to put little nuggets in there in a way of humor. It was one thing, to write the book, but it's another thing to have the wonderful illustrators add them. Mm-hmm. And then when that one was very welcomed by kids and by teachers and principals and secretaries, then I came up, everybody kept saying in school visits, when are you going to write the next one? And what is it going to be about? And I said, well, what do you think it should be about? And of course, at every school visit, they give you ideas. And one girl, when she had purchased and I was signing this one, she leaned over to me and said, Mary Bleckwehl, I think you should write a book about Henry liking junk food. And I said, oh, why do you think I should do that? And she whispered and kind of looked around like, I don't want anybody to hear this. She said, because I really like junk food. And so I went home that day and I wrote the first version of Henry, You're Hungry Again. And as all authors can somehow relate to parts of their book, I can kind of relate to that. I like my share of junk food, but then I also know that healthy eating is important. And in the end, Henry realizes this too. My last fiction picture book that has been released is Claire's Hair. And this is a story that's very different than the Henry books. It's about the wild and crazy-haired Claire and her best friend, Albert. And they love to do crazy, fun things with her hair. And one day, and they love to laugh about the things they do. And then one day when Albert gets sick and loses his hair, the word cancer isn't used, but it's kind of implied that maybe that's the reason why he's lost his hair. The laughter has gone away. And Claire has to figure out her big, hairy idea for how to bring the laughter back. So that's Claire's Hair. And then just last month, actually this was supposed to come out last summer, but because of COVID, it was delayed. This is my first stab at writing nonfiction. And this is one of, I think it's 6 books in a series that came out from Black Rabbit Books, publishing company in Mankato, Minnesota, called The Birthday Cookbook. And it's got some very simple and easy recipes for young kids to make, whether it's for a birthday party or any other event. Everything from appetizers to the main entree, and of course, the dessert. And then I have, but I don't have them to show you because they're not released yet. I have coming out in September my debut middle grade novel called 2 Girls in a Yellow Bucket. And the second, I just signed actually yesterday, kind of an exciting time,
Congratulations.
contract for a second middle grade novel. And then four more, I've already written them, but they won't be released till next spring, a year from now. Four more nonfiction books that are part of a series called, you'll love this, Awesome Disgusting Careers
Yeah.
for kids.
Cool. I like that.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And one thing I know everybody out there wants to know, where can we get Mary's books? Can you help us with that?
Mm-hmm. My website is just my name, marybleckwehl.com. And my last name is spelled a little tricky, so you have to make sure it's spelled right. At any rate, you can always order from, or you can contact me if you want an autographed copy of any of my books off of the contact button on my website. But also they're available online channels. Then you just ask a bookseller to order it for you. And I will mention that the nonfiction books like this one, the Birthday Cookbook, these are books for what we call the education market, largely schools and libraries. And so you're not likely to find them in a bookstore, but rather in a library or from a school, because again, it's a different market than the regular trade market where you find them in a bookstore to buy.
Okay. Mary also is a member of Kiddie Lit Market, so her books are available on our website as well. Our website takes you to her website, and it's kind of a roundabout way, but you would get there. I know you do a lot of school visits, and I have been too, and I absolutely love the questions that we get from kids. Some of them, are just hysterical. But one that I really enjoy listening to the answer is, how can I be an author when I grow up? What kind of advice would you give an aspiring young author?
That was a good question, because I'll speak for myself, but I think for many authors who go out, and especially in schools, we are there to inspire the next generation of readers and writers, or just simply to inspire people to go for their dreams. Even not everybody's going to be a writer. But to answer your question, I've been told through the courses and classes that I continue to take to improve my craft, that first and foremost, you have to read what it is you want to write. So I am going to our local public library all the time, and I'm checking out stacks of books, picture books, middle grade books, whatever it is, nonfiction books, whatever it is I want to write about. So I know what's kind of currently in the stream of published books. So read would be the first thing that I would say, but also to keep a little journal of some kind. And if you don't have a one that's bought, you can just use a spiral notebook, or you can use the backs of recyclable paper, out of a stack at school or at home, and staple it together in the corner or fold it over or something, and jot down anything of interest to you. A lyric from a favorite song, or something that your older brother or sister, or your younger brother or sister said that you think is funny or interesting, or from an ad on TV. We just had those great Super Bowl ads. Something that you noticed from that. Also, to if you're a student, to welcome rather than dread. I know it's hard, because sometimes I have the same problem when I teach. To welcome feedback from others. Doing an assignment and handing it in sometimes is, I think we all have developed that feeling like of being a little nervous about getting feedback. But you don't have to wait to have an assignment to get feedback. show it to a friend, to your mom, to your best friend, your cousin, to see, or even maybe get them in on it and say, I've written this first chapter. How about you write the second chapter, or you illustrate this for me? So there's a lot of different things that we can do to expand to improve our craft, but also kind of get into it and really get excited about what our dreams are.
Absolutely. Thank you for that great advice, Mary. I love your idea of using the backs of the paper that you're going to recycle. That's marvelous. Make it work.
Make it work.
That's what they say. Right, exactly. Well, thank you very much, Mary. We've enjoyed our little visit with you this afternoon. And remember, her website is marybleckwehl.com. Easy to get to. And we for sure will have the correct spelling of her name visible for all so that you can all get to her website. And I think you sure can agree with me that Mary sparks creativity, doesn't she? I know I want to go write something right now. Thanks so much, Mary. I hope you'll join us again soon.
Thank you, Diane. And I want to end by saying, the same way that I end all my school author visits and any adult presentation too, as far as that's concerned, I always tell people that, in a world where you can grow up and do and be just about anything, don't forget to be kind.